strategy, social entrepreneurship, and international project development. And most of all, thank you, attendees, panelists, moderators, keynotes, MIIS community, and sponsors for joining us today. Please be considerate to turn off your buzzers, rings, and alarms on laptops, cell phones, and PDAs so as not to disturb our attendees and speakers. Please fill out our survey conveniently located in your conference bag and found at the registration table. Please drop it off at the end of the day at the registration table. The MIIS International Trade Club looks forward to receiving your feedback in order to improve next year's conference. We have a wonderful day scheduled, and in order to schedule, we please ask that you return promptly to the room and be seated on time for the next panel or keynote address. Thank you. We invite all attendees to join us immediately after the conference for a networking reception located one block up the hill in the Sampson Reading Room. More details will follow. Lastly, please feel free to stop any of the student volunteers and planning committee members wearing designated name tags with a star with any questions you may have. Now let's begin with the conference. The MIIS International Trade Club is honored to invite MIIS President Sundar Ramaswamy to the podium to kick off the conference. Dr. Ramaswamy is widely recognized for his scholarly and professional work in international and development economics, particularly in India and Africa. Before coming to MIIS, Dr. Ramaswamy served as Middlebury College's Frederick C. Dirks Professor of Economics and the Dean for Faculty Development and Research. He has also served as the director of the Madras School of Economics in Chennai, India, one of India's premier institutes for graduate education and economics research. Dr. Ramaswamy has worked with the World Banks on projects fostering economic reforms in India and has also worked with USAID projects on agricultural development in sub-Saharan Africa. As well, he has served as a consultant to UNCTAD and UNIDO on specific projects in India. Let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Sundar Ramaswamy.
And good morning to everyone, and it's my very distinct pleasure to welcome everyone from near and far to the Monterey Institute for this wonderful conference that has been put together. I think in the next many decades, when we continue to think about the last 2 years, what people in my profession would call the Great Recession, and continue to analyze what causes led to it and how did we get into that mess and what did we do right and how do we prevent something like this from happening, especially at the same intensity. I think the two things that I find very interesting, one is what I would call evidence of policy learning compared to the 1930s when we had a similar global depression. What's striking about the last 18 months is the fact that central bankers and governments have coordinated their actions much better and didn't follow the beggar thy neighbor policies that we found during the 1930s, which is maybe some cause for optimism that we do learn. But the other one, which might be more relevant for today's conference, is the fact that unlike in the 1930s, this time around, we do have other growth centers and other growth poles in the global economy which have acted as buffers and has prevented the entire global economy from sliding into a global depression. And anybody who's visited, as I'm sure many of you in this room have, if you go to places like China and India or even Brazil and a few others, they seem to have regarded the meltdown of the 2008. Everybody got affected, mind you, but they seem to have regarded it as sort of an irritating speed bump and kept going. And I think that has also offered some interesting parallels for how, when we look at today's conference on emerging markets, what sort of a counter they offer to, unlike in 70 years ago when there was no counter to when the US and Europe started to slide. One of the most exciting and remarkable aspects from my standpoint as the president of this institute is frankly that this entire conference has been organized by the students. We all have taken part and organized lots of conferences as professional academics, but it's very impressive to see, other than some guidance and support monetarily, that much of the legwork for today's panel and panelists has been done by Galen and her able set of volunteers, and everybody's been doing carrying a full load, and they still managed to put together such an impressive list. And I'm sure you'll agree that when you look at the roster of everyone who's been invited, and they managed to get everybody to come, which is also quite a testament, it is in fact very remarkable. I also would like to take this opportunity to thank all of our guests who have traveled to Monterey, even though it's a beautiful place. It's not the easiest place to get to sometimes, but you've come from near and far. But especially to recognize our keynote speakers, Dr. Robert Rogowski, Dr. Bill Lewis, and our closing speaker, who's also with us at the Institute for since January as a distinguished research professor, Ambassador Alan Wolf. Before introducing Dr. Rogowski, I would also acknowledge and thank the students from the Institute's Translation and Interpretation program who are back in the booths. They are providing simultaneous interpretation in the day's proceedings in Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Spanish. Events like this one are often wonderful opportunities for the students in different programs at the Institute to work together as a team. And if you are interested, you should take part and listen to it and get a sense of why the Institute is so widely regarded the world over for its T&I programs. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's opening keynote speaker, Dr. Robert Rogowski. Dr. Rogowski is currently a research fellow at the Independent Institute and Director of Operations for the United States International Trade Commission. As Director of Operations for the ITC, he manages a staff of 240 who are responsible for anti-dumping and countervailing duty investigations, for research, technical expertise, and trade policy assistance for the USTR, the United States Trade Representative, and the Congress, and also for maintenance of the harmonized tariff system. Dr. Rogowski is also Adjunct Professor of International Trade at George Mason University School of Public Policy and at the American University School of International Service. Prior to joining the ITC senior staff, he served as Deputy Director of the Bureau of Consumer Protection at the Federal Trade Commission and Acting Executive Director of the Consumer Product Safety Commission. He also previously served as an antitrust research and litigation economist at the Bureau of Economics at the FTC. He has written widely on international trade, competition policy and regulation, and received his PhD in economics from the University of Virginia. On behalf of the Monterey Institute, Dr. Rogowski, thank you very much for joining us today, and it's my pleasure to turn over the podium to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It is a really special honor for me to be here, especially to have been invited by the students to come back to Monterey and to give a presentation here. Just let me say up front, I come not as a representative of government. I don't speak for them. My views are simply my own and not necessarily those of the commission or any individual commissioners. I want to especially say thank you to Galen for allowing me to come out and be part of this. And forewarn you that it's very hard for me. I'm a distance runner, and so I consider a 20-minute speech a sprint. And so we'll see how well we do. I'm going to work at this. My lectures are usually 2.5 hours, but I'm going to try to do this in time. So you, of course, know what it means when a professor puts his watch prominently in front of him on the podium. Absolutely nothing. But I will do my best.